I used to love the way she laughed at my jokes. Not the polite, obligatory chuckle people give when something's only mildly funny, but the real kind, the kind where her nose would wrinkle just slightly, where she'd sometimes cover her mouth as if embarrassed by how much she was enjoying herself. Diane had one of those laughs that made you want to keep talking just to hear it again. 12 years of marriage, and that sound never got old. We met in our late 30s, both of us carrying just enough baggage to be cautious, but not so much that we'd given up. She was a paralegal at a small firm downtown. I was mid-level management at an insurance company. Not glamorous lives, but stable, comfortable. We bought a modest house in a quiet neighborhood where the biggest excitement was watching Mr. Peterson across the street try to parallel park his ancient Cadillac every Sunday after church. Our marriage wasn't perfect, but it was solid. At least that's what I told myself when people asked. We had our routines. Coffee together every morning, even when we were running late, takeout every Friday night, lazy Sundays with the newspaper spread across the kitchen table. She'd hum absent-mindedly while making dinner, and I'd pretend not to notice when she stole bites of whatever she was cooking before it was done. Little things that added up to a life. Then she joined that damn gym. It started innocently enough. January rolled around, and like half the population, Diane decided this was the year she'd get in shape. "I'm not getting any younger," she'd said, pinching at her waist in front of our bedroom mirror. I told her she looked fine, because she did. But I understood. I'd been avoiding my own doctor's warnings about cholesterol for years. At first I was happy for her. She came home from those early sessions energized in a way I hadn't seen in years. Her cheeks would be flushed, her hair piled in a messy bun, smelling of sweat and whatever fancy shampoo they had in the locker room. She'd talk animatedly about the different machines, about how good it felt to push herself. I'd nod along while stirring my evening coffee, only half listening as she explained the difference between a lat pull-down and a seated row. Then came the first mention of Jason. "Jason says I'm a natural at squats," she told me one evening, toweling off her hair. There was something in her voice, a lilt, an energy, that made me look up from my book. "Who's Jason?" "My trainer. He's really knowledgeable." I nodded, making a mental note that this was apparently important enough to remember. "That's great, hon." The mentions became more frequent. Jason thought she should try interval training. Jason said her posture was improving. Jason recommended this new protein powder. Each time her voice took on this brightness. At first I chalked it up to enthusiasm for her new hobby. Then I started noticing other changes. She bought new workout clothes, not just functional leggings and tees, but outfits that looked like they belonged in an athletic wear commercial. Suddenly she was blow-drying her hair before going to the gym at 6 a.m. There were new playlists on her phone, full of songs I'd never heard her listen to before. One night, as we lay in bed, her phone buzzed on the nightstand. She reached for it quickly, too quickly, angling the screen away as she typed a response. "Who's texting this late?" I asked. "Just Jason," she said, a little too casually, "confirming our session time for tomorrow." I stared at the ceiling in the dark, listening to the quiet tap of her thumbs on the screen. The digital clock read 11:17 p.m. "It's pretty late for scheduling," I murmured. "He works weird hours," she said, setting the phone back down. "You know how trainers are." I didn't, actually, but I let it go, because the alternative, the thought taking shape in the back of my mind, was too ugly to entertain. "It's just fitness," I told myself. "She's just excited about her new routine." I almost believed it. The doubt crept in slowly, like a stain spreading through fabric. At first I could ignore it, tell myself I was imagining things, but then the signs became too obvious to dismiss. She started staying late at the gym. "Just finishing up my routine," she'd text, but the timestamps kept stretching later. 7 p.m., then 8, then 9. Once I drove by the gym on my way home from work, just to see if her car was still there. It was. The parking lot was nearly empty. Her phone habits changed. It used to sit on the kitchen counter, screen up, buzzing with notifications from her sister or work. Now, it was always face down, always in her pocket or purse. If I walked into the room while she was texting, her fingers would freeze for half a second before she locked the screen. Then came the missed dates. Little things at first. Forgot we had plans, babe. I already told Jason I'd do an extra session. Then bigger ones. Our anniversary dinner reservation canceled last minute because she wasn't feeling well. But when I came home early with soup, she wasn't there. Her gym bag was gone. I started noticing other things. The way she smelled different when she came home, not just sweat, but a hint of unfamiliar cologne. The way she'd shower immediately, scrubbing her skin like she was washing something away. The way she avoided my eyes when I asked how her workout went. The night I found the receipt, I wasn't even looking for it. I was taking out the trash when a crumpled slip of paper caught my eye. A charge from the Ridgeway Hotel, $189. The date was a Tuesday, 2 weeks back, the night she'd told me she was working late. My hand shook as I flattened it against the counter. I stood there for a long time, staring at the piece of paper, my mind racing through excuses. Business meeting? Surprise for me? But we hadn't stayed in a hotel since our 5th anniversary. And the Ridgeway wasn't some romantic getaway. It was a bland business hotel near the highway. That's when I knew. I waited until she was asleep that night, then took her phone into the bathroom. My stomach twisted as I typed in her passcode, our wedding date, and opened her messages. There they were, dozens of them. Flirty, suggestive, explicit. The last one, sent just before she came to bed. Can't wait for tomorrow, 3 p.m. same room. I put the phone back exactly where I found it. Then I sat on the edge of the bathtub in the dark, gripping the sides until my knuckles turned white. The worst part? Part of me still hoped I was wrong. I waited until morning. Not because I was calm, I hadn't slept at all, but because I needed to see if she'd actually go through with it. At breakfast, she moved around the kitchen like nothing was wrong, poured coffee, asked if I wanted toast. I studied her hands, the same hands that had touched me, touched him, and wondered how many lies they'd typed. "You're working late again today?" I asked, my voice surprisingly steady. She didn't look up from her phone. Just a quick session with Jason. Should be home by 5. The receipt burned in my pocket. I called in sick to work and followed her. The Ridgeway's parking lot was half empty when she pulled in at 2:53 p.m. I watched from my car as she checked her hair in the mirror, applied fresh lipstick, small, devastating preparations. When Jason's black Jeep rolled in 10 minutes later, something inside me snapped. I didn't storm up to the room, didn't pound on the door, just sat there gripping my steering wheel, imagining every terrible possibility until I couldn't breathe. That night, I confronted her in our living room. "Who's Jason really to you?" Her face went pale. "What?" I threw the receipt on the coffee table. "Room 312, today." The silence that followed was the loudest sound I'd ever heard. When she finally spoke, her voice was small. "It's not what you think." "Then tell me what it is." She couldn't. The excuses came in fragments. "We're just friends. It only happened once. It didn't mean anything." Each one landing like a hammer. I asked all the cliché questions. How long? Was it just him? Did you ever love me? Her answers didn't matter. The truth was in the way she couldn't meet my eyes, in the way she hugged herself like she was the one who'd been betrayed. When she left that night, just took her purse and walked out, the house felt different. Not emptier, but heavier, like the walls themselves knew. I found one of her hair ties on the bathroom sink the next morning. Just a cheap elastic, the kind she always left everywhere. I held it until the coil left marks on my palm, then threw it away. The gym bag was still in our closet. I couldn't bring myself to touch it. The weeks after Diane left passed in a fog. I moved through work like a ghost, signing documents and attending meetings without remembering any of it. Our house, now just my house, echoed with absence. I stopped cooking meals, living off takeout, eaten standing at the kitchen counter. The bed became too big, so I slept on the couch, the TV flickering through infomercials until dawn. Then came the email that changed everything. "Mr. Callahan, we're impressed with your work at Hartford Mutual. Our VP of Operations is retiring, and we'd like to discuss you potentially filling the role." The signature at the bottom made my breath catch. Michael Reeves, CEO, Peak Fitness Group. I nearly deleted it. Peak Fitness was one of the largest gym chains in the state. Jason's employer. For 3 days, I stared at that email. The rational part of me screamed this was a terrible idea, working for the company that employed the man who'd helped destroy my marriage. But another voice, quieter but persistent, whispered, "Why should you be the one who loses everything?" The interview was held in a sleek high-rise downtown. As the elevator climbed, I caught my reflection, the first time I'd worn a suit since Diane left. The circles under my eyes betrayed me. Michael Reeves was all firm handshakes and sharp smiles. "Your turnaround of Hartford's claims department was impressive," he said, flipping through my portfolio. "We need that kind of strategic thinking." He mentioned the salary, nearly double what I made now, spoke about growth potential. The whole time, all I could think was, does he know? Does anyone here know? When he finally asked if I had questions, I heard myself say, "How many trainers work at your flagship location?" "About 20, Michael replied. "Our top performer is Jason Cole. You might have seen his social media campaigns." The name hit like a punch. I kept my face carefully blank. "I'll need to review all staff files if I take the position." "Of course." Michael leaned forward. "So are you in?" I should have said no, should have walked away from this twisted cosmic joke. Instead, I shook his hand. The paperwork arrived 2 days later. I signed without reading it, the pen scratching loudly in the silent house. That night, I drank an entire bottle of scotch sitting on the floor of what used to be our bedroom, staring at the closet where Diane's clothes had hung. My first day at Peak Fitness, I arrived early. The corporate office overlooked the flagship gym through floor-to-ceiling windows. From my new desk, I could see the workout floor below, the rows of treadmills, the weight stations, the personal training zone. And there he was, Jason. Leading a middle-aged woman through squats, his hand correcting her form in that same way I'd seen him touch Diane in photos I wish I'd never found. He was taller than I'd imagined, his tan skin and perfect teeth gleaming under the gym lights. Everything about him screamed effortless superiority. I watched until my assistant brought in the staff files. Jason Cole's was on top. I opened it slowly, my fingers leaving damp prints on the manila folder. Inside was his employment contract, his performance reviews, his emergency contact, a girlfriend, not Diane. Proof that while my marriage had ended, his life had continued unchanged. That's when I realized I wasn't just his boss now. I held his career in my hands. Every raise, every promotion, every disciplinary action would cross my desk. The power of that knowledge settled over me like a heavy coat. Not sweet, not satisfying, just there. A fact as undeniable as the wedding ring I'd finally stopped wearing. The first departmental meeting was scheduled for 10 a.m. on my third day. I arrived 15 minutes early to find the conference room empty, except for one person, Jason, sitting at the far end of the table, scrolling through his phone. He didn't look up when I entered. I set my files down with deliberate force. The sound made him glance up, then do a double take. His brow furrowed as recognition flickered across his face. I saw the exact moment he placed me. His eyes darted to my left hand, searching for a ring that was no longer there. "Mr. Callahan," he said, recovering quickly. Too quickly. "Didn't realize you'd be joining us today." "I'm running the meeting," I said, taking my seat at the head of the table. "As your new VP." The color drained from his face. His phone slipped from his fingers and clattered onto the table. For a beautiful suspended moment, Jason Cole, Peak Fitness's golden boy, looked like a man realizing he'd stepped into quicksand. The rest of the staff filed in, oblivious to the tension. I led the meeting with calm professionalism, discussing third-quarter targets and new corporate initiatives. All the while, I watched Jason from my periphery. He sat unnaturally still, his usual cocky demeanor replaced by something approaching fear. His knee bounced under the table. He drank 3 bottles of water in 40 minutes. When the meeting ended, he practically bolted for the door. I let him reach the threshold before calling out, "Jason?" "My office." 5 minutes. The way his shoulders tensed would have been comical if it didn't taste so bitter. He arrived exactly 4 minutes later, hovering in my doorway like a kid sent to the principal's office. I let him stand there while I finished typing an email, the silence stretching until it became its own form of punishment. Finally, I looked up. Close the door. He did, his movements stiff. The office suddenly felt smaller, the air thicker. I studied him, really studied him, for the first time. Up close, he wasn't as perfect as his Instagram suggested. A small scar bisected his left eyebrow. His knuckles were slightly swollen, probably from years of improper weightlifting form. The realization that this ordinary man had upended my life made me want to laugh or scream. I did neither. I assume we have an understanding, I said. He swallowed hard. About what, sir? The sir was new. I leaned back in my chair. You're good at your job, Jason. Your client retention numbers are impressive. I tapped his personnel file on my desk. But let's be clear. This is a professional relationship. Nothing more. His jaw worked silently for a moment before he managed. Of course. Good. I opened a spreadsheet on my computer, effectively dismissing him. Oh, and Jason? He paused halfway out the door. Yes? I'll be reviewing all trainer schedules. Effective immediately, you'll no longer be training clients at the downtown Ridgeway hotel location. I met his eyes. Corporate policy? The flash of panic in his expression was everything I'd imagined and nothing like what I expected. There was no satisfaction in it, just a hollow sort of acknowledgement that this was how things were now. He left without another word. Through my office window, I watched him pace the hallway, running a hand through his hair before pulling out his phone, probably to text Diane. The thought should have angered me. Instead, I felt nothing but tired. Later that afternoon, HR delivered the staff reorganization plans. I circled Jason's name, moving him from prime morning slots to the less desirable late afternoon shift. Not punitive enough to be questioned, but enough to sting, enough to remind him. As I initialed the changes, my assistant appeared with a stack of mail. On top was a handwritten envelope, Diane's looping script unmistakable even after all these months. I set it aside unopened and went back to work. The letter sat on my desk for 3 days before I opened it. Diane's words were careful, apologies wrapped in justifications, regrets tangled with excuses. She asked if we could talk. I didn't reply. Instead, I did something I hadn't done in months. I cleaned out the closet. Her gym bag was still there, dusty and forgotten. I emptied it, old protein bars, a water bottle, a hair tie. At the bottom, a crumpled receipt from a smoothie bar, dated 6 months ago. 2 straws. I threw it all away. At work, Jason adapted. He was polite in meetings, careful with his emails. He stopped posting gym selfies. Once I caught him staring at me from the weight floor, his expression unreadable. I didn't fire him, didn't sabotage him, just treated him like any other employee, which I realized was the real punishment. He wasn't worth my anger anymore. The first morning, I woke up without thinking of her. It didn't feel like victory, just silence. The kind that comes after a storm passes when all that's left is to rebuild. I never wrote Diane back, but one afternoon, I walked past the smoothie place near our old house, the same one from the receipt. I almost kept walking, then stopped, went in, and ordered my usual. Not ours, mine. The kid at the counter handed me my drink with a smile. Just 1 straw? I took it. Yeah, just one.